Essentially, JRF's approaches bottoms up engagement of the community with active community participation. They start with a raising of awareness, imparting of knowledge and training, increased community capacity to actually manage the projects. And when they do that, they're actually asking the community to not only manage the projects, but to identify what problems they want to resolve, what kinds of projects they want to implement to actually resolve those problems, and the methodologies to remedy those problems. The decisions about what constitutes success are at the community level. So the community actually has a sense of ownership in the entire process from start to finish. It's a balance between strong community engagement and the scope and scale of management. The management of the projects that are selected by the community are actually managed by community members. JRF provides some resources to the community, but does not engage in structuring the projects themselves, nor the management. Essentially, it's a diffusion of innovation. From Aljun in the north to Aqaba in the south, the process was identical. We actually visited 16 projects from the northern part of the Kingdom of Jordan to the southern part, and the process was identical, and independent of whether it was focused on community empowerment programs, youth development, or child safety program. There are so many success stories. I could go on for quite some time. I'll just give you some examples. In Wadi Araba, we were at a meeting outside in a park, and we were supposed to be meeting with community leaders. And we were having a subsequent meeting with youth. Youth came at the same time the community leaders came and joined in on the conversation. They were respectful, but they voiced their opinion. It was obvious that they felt empowered to voice their opinion. What was really interesting is that many of the youth actually talked about running for municipal elections and then serving. A clear example of civic engagement on the part of the youth. There were women that were working in Wadi Araba from Bedouin tribes. The culture of the tribal culture, for the most part, women are at home. They do not work. But these women were working. They were harvesting cucumbers. What was really interesting about that was not the fact that they were working. That was important, but the fact that they had formed their own microfinancing system themselves. So for example, when I asked about the importance of their work, they talked about being able to send their children to school, emphasizing being able to send their daughters to college. What was amazing is I said, obviously it's seasonal work. So what do you do when there's no cucumbers to harvest? And the women said that we borrow money from each other. I borrowed, and she pointed to another woman, from her. Her children are young, they're not at college. When they grow older and they go to college, I'll be in a position to lend them money. So they had their own successful finance project. There was a cold storage plant in Aljun in the north. And what the community realized is that the climate is really good for producing fruits and some vegetables. And obviously the fruits and vegetables need to be sold, but the cold storage allowed them to maintain those fruits and vegetables to sell them at a higher unit price when the fruits and vegetables were not in season. But what was remarkable about that is that obviously not all of the vegetables or fruits actually made it to the cold storage plant. So they actually created a vinegar plant that took the apples that didn't meet criteria for cold storage, but could be produced in vinegar, could be used in vinegar production, another source of income generating activities. There was an olive press, again in the north, and the community decided not to use the olive press to actually make olive oil, but to offer the service for the farmers. So they offered olive pressing services to a little more than 1,000 farmers. What was extraordinary about this initiative was the fact that the community on their own established a business plan which clearly demonstrated that the purchase of a second olive press would not increase any operational cost, but would double the yield in terms of the income generated from the pressing of the olives. The demand was high enough for a second olive press. The staff that was currently working the first press could adequately work the second. What was also interesting is that, again, not all olives meet criteria for pressing into olive oil. So the olives, the stems, the leaves that were sorted out were actually used in terms of making fodder blocks. These fodder blocks were organic material that could be used for the heating of people's homes in the wintertime, cooler weather. Organic material, much safer than kerosene or charcoal that is often used. Again, there were a lot of microfinancing projects that were very inspiring. There were dress shops in Aqaba. There was a PlayStation, a supermarket. What was amazing is that the CBOs who manage, and again the CBOs are community members who have been through JRF training, the CBOs report that on average 95% of the loans are paid back in full and on time. This is an outstanding outcome from their microfinancing initiatives, and it would be envied by any international or national bank in my country. In terms of, that's just community empowerment. In terms of the child safety program, that was very heartwarming and inspiring. I had a young boy who talked about having a conversation, being able to talk to his mother, the fact that they were not yelling at each other, and talked about the fact that his mother had taken training and he noticed that they were engaging in conversations. I had another child talk about siblings, and as you know, younger siblings can be often irritating. And what was interesting about this young boy was the fact that he talked about, before he had received the training through JRF, he used to hit his younger brothers so that they would stop irritating him. Now he talks to them, and in a constructive way. He no longer hits back. What was interesting also is that children are able to speak out about their own protection, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and they speak up for themselves. This is very different. Children demonstrate this in their drawings, in their drama. What was heartwarming was a mother who spoke about the fact that she was in her child's drawing, and the child's drawing really depict a happy family that was communicating together. The Child Safety Program also has a 110 helpline. It obviously has impact. The calls doubled, 200% increase in over a year, which is a clear indication of the effectiveness of JRF in raising community awareness about the risks and consequences of child abuse and how to resolve that in terms of seeking help through the 110 hotline. There were lots of candid conversations from teachers and school administrators talking about how there was a tension between using age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate, constructive discipline as opposed to using the stick. The stick has often been thought of as harsh discipline raises strong children, but they're now beginning to see that constructive, age-appropriate discipline is much more effective than simply using the stick. But you can clearly see that there's a tension. Also, the Child Safety Program has really expanded to a school safety program. And it was very interesting that in Aqaba, a school principal talked about the fact that she was not happy to have the school safety program in her school at all. And now she talks about she can't imagine the school without this particular program, a complete turnaround. She was able to list a lot of the benefits of the Child Safety School Initiative as well. In addition to the Child Safety Program and the community empowerment, JRF really is involved in youth initiatives. The youth are trained in areas of hospitality and tourism, two areas where there is employment for individuals and citizens in Jordan. It's very important to have job opportunities for youth. But what JRF has done also is to increase the sense of volunteerism and the importance of volunteerism. Volunteerism, as I understand it, is not really characteristic of the Arab culture. And through volunteerism, youth get hands-on experience in terms of different career options. They gain skills and expertise, which actually increases the opportunity for them to seek jobs. It's a pathway to strong civic engagement, which the Kingdom of Jordan is most particularly interested in, especially civic engagement of youth in the Arab region. When I think about the role of JRF in the communities, I think about an old saying that we have in the United States. If you give a person a fish, they will be hungry again. If you teach the person to fish, they won't be hungry. And what JRF does is it teaches people to fish. It teaches people to identify the problems that have the greatest priority. It gives them the skills and capacity to address those problems, to think strategically about methodologies that will ameliorate those problems. It gives them the skills and a sense of ownership. So not all of the projects that the community have selected were smooth sailing. Some of them resulted in outcomes that part of the community was not happy with, but they had a sense of ownership, and they can step back and think about, well, this worked partially, but what can we do to make things more effective, more efficient? It also gives them an opportunity to listen to the voices of the community, so everyone feels heard, and when that happens, there's a greater sense of ownership. It's clear that the methodologies that JRF uses in terms of community empowerment, in the child safety program, in the youth career initiatives, clearly work. So being able to share those methodologies, what was very interesting, independent of where I was in the kingdom, north or south, the methodologies were consistent. The communities have learned. So the methodologies that JRF are using are efficient and effective, and they're very sustainable. What JRF needs to do is to really spread these methodologies. They also can establish themselves as a center of excellence for these methodologies, and to build in building community empowerment, in establishing safe schools. The safe schools, for example, the child safety program was spearheaded by JRF. And in terms of JRF, they spearheaded the National Family Protection System, which was the first of its kind in the Arab region. And the methodologies that JRF used in spearheading this initiative can be shared to other areas in the region, other Arab countries in the region, and actually further. A lot of the JRF methodologies would actually work in the United States. Systematic evaluation of the processes, the outcomes, and the impact of the JRF initiatives are equally important, and dissemination of those reports in terms of social media, on the websites, training, participation at conferences, all equally important. Case studies really emphasizing the most significant changes that have occurred as a result of JRF initiatives in community empowerment, child safety, youth career initiatives, and so forth. So actually sharing what JRF has known more broadly, supporting it by strong evaluation, that is a method that would surely work in terms of spreading the word in terms of JRF's success and effectiveness.